Before we start the session, I would like to inform that this session will be recorded. So to ensure the session, this session today will be a smooth one, so I would like to remind everyone to off your mic to avoid any interruption. So for a better experience, you are encouraged to off your video as well. However, we will have a photo session towards the end of the session, so please do on your video for the photo session. So good morning once again. My name is Jimmy and I'm an MC for today's event. It is good to see all of you today. So welcome to PenDaPaT Discourse Series number 3. I can see some familiar participants. Thank you for your continuous support. And for those who have joined us for the first time, welcome once again. Allow me to do a brief introduction about PenDaPaT. The name of the organization is Malaysian Society for Higher Education Policy and Research Development, in short, PenDaPaT. We are a professional and non-government organization determined to provide informed feedback and suggestion towards issues regarding the national higher education policies and practices. So this year, despite the pandemic, we have organized Discourse series to address national higher education issues and how can we respond it to the policies and also practices. Today, we have the PenDaPaT Discourse Series 3 entitled Emergency, Remote and Online, Students Learning Amidst Lockdown. So the objective is to provide participants with the on-ground realities of online learning from students' perspective. So this discourse is intended to give the voice to the students concerned regarding online teaching and learning during the pandemic. Administrators and policymakers would then respond with the intervention to improve online teaching and learning for the student. So without further ado, let's welcome Associate Professor Dr. Rosilini, the organizing chair for this event, for her welcoming speech. So over to you, Dr. Rose.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see me and I'm clear. Yes, Jimmy, can you see me and it's clear?
Yes, I can see you.
Cheers. Excellent. Thank you, Jimmy. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to the PenDaPaT Discourse Series number 3. Allow me to start the session by channeling the best wishes from our president, Dr. Professor Nurzaini, and her dedicated committee members, the AJK we call them. We probably have a better acronym for them next time, like James Bond or something. Now, a very special shout out to friends and colleagues from outside Malaysia who are with us today. Just to name a few, we have colleagues from Nepal, Bangladesh, Indonesia, the Philippines, Cambodia. We are happy to have all of you with us for this final webinar of the year in the PenDaPaT Discourse Series. Now, we are pleased to welcome and have with us an energetic panel of students, if you can put your hands together for them, and a wise and experienced panel of experts to deliberate on a critical topic, student learning amidst lockdown. Now, you must be wondering, and perhaps you are already aware, that the Ministry of Higher Education's announcement of the measures taken for granting conditional return to universities commencing less than a month from today, and I think it's 15th of October. Thus, you may be wondering, why are we still debating students learning in lockdown? The truth of the matter is that education and higher education will never be the same again. While life reverts to some form of normality post-lockdown, recent surveys and studies tell us that students, particularly in higher education, are not keen to see normality returning to university life. Let me elaborate. While it is clear that students want to return to campus, there is definitely a significant amount of uncertainty about whether they want to return to the classrooms. Well, we don't blame them, or perhaps we should. We don't know, but certainly we know that they are not so comfortable. They're very comfortable with online delivery, but they prefer to do it on campus. Yeah. So while the value of physical classrooms cannot be underestimated in developing people and life skills, many students believe that social interaction on campus and outside the physical classroom provide better avenues for developing these skills. So we, policymakers, teachers, administrators, managers, leaders of universities, need to take stock and listen to our students. Their experience of a fully online delivery mode will inform our future practices in balancing what students want and what they need. Moving forward, we need a sustainable and inclusive environment to enhance the student experience, achieving a better balance of quality of life and continuing to grow research and support communities around us. Therefore, we are here to give voice to our students and debate its policy implications from their sharing. We hope that at the end of today's webinar, we will have many great examples of good practices which we can implement in our new norm. Thank you all for your wonderful presence at this webinar, and I look forward to a robust deliberation on our topic today, emergency, remote and online students learning amidst lockdown. Thank you and have a wonderful webinar. Back to you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Dr. Rose, for the welcoming remarks. So now let's begin our first session by our student panel. Our moderator for this session is Ms. Mazura Abdul Malik. She is a senior lecturer in the School of Media and Communication, Taylor's University, Malaysia. She holds a bachelor degree in mass communication, majoring in public relations, and an MBA from University Technology Mara, Malaysia. Her administrative position of Program Director for Public Relations Program in Taylor's University has made her close to the students, hence her ability to understand well the students' needs during the pandemic. She is a member of Institute of Public Relations Malaysia, Public Relations and Communication Association. A linguist at heart, she studied French in Geneva University, France, and Norwegian in Westminster University, London. Mazura was one of those who were present during the early stage of the setting up of PenDaPaT. She is a lifetime member of PenDaPaT. So now let's welcome Mazura. Over to you, Mazura.
Thank you, Jimmy. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jimmy, for that kind introduction. In order to encourage inclusive and open dialogue in this discourse, we shall follow the Chatham House rule, which states that when there is a meeting or part thereof is held under the Chatham House rule, participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speaker or speakers, nor that of any other participants may be revealed. With that, we agree that this PenDaPaT Discourse Series 3 will be conducted using the Chatham House rule, with the purpose of giving a voice to students' concerns regarding online teaching and learning throughout this pandemic. It is our hope, as mentioned by the chair of this Series 3 discourse, that after this discourse, it will be taken up by the administrators and policymakers that will then improve the online teaching and learning for students. I would now like to introduce our student panel. We have Ms. Ngo Tien Shin. She is the undergraduate in Business and Arts from Heriot Ward University, Malaysia. We also have Mr. Doshant Rai Kalichun. He is from Mauritius. He is an undergraduate in Technology and Computing from Asia Pacific University. We also have Mr. Muhammad Akmal Alif bin Shah Iran. He is from University Technology Malaysia, an undergraduate in engineering. We also have Ms. Candace Chia. She is an undergraduate in veterinary from University Malaysia Kelantan. And we also have Mr. Lazarus Geyang, who is from Nigeria, and he is the final year postgraduate from University Putra, Malaysia. Welcome to all student panelists to PenDaPaT Discourse Series 3, Emergency, Remote and Online Student and Learning Amidst Lockdown. Now, without further ado, I would like to just give a guideline on how this course will be carried out. Students will be answering questions and also share their personal information and also any other information that they have gathered from their friends since March 2020, okay? That is about 18 months now. This discourse will be based on the code of practice for program accreditation by the Malaysian Qualifications Agency, MQA. So we call this program as, or document as COPA 2.0. So ladies and gentlemen, the focus for this morning will be in 5 critical areas of COPA 2.0. They are, number 1, assessment of student learning. Number 2, student support services. Thirdly, educational resources, followed by program management. And the last area which we will be discussing will be in their social aspects. Now with that, let us go to the first area, which is on assessment of student learning. I would now like to call upon Shin, okay, with regards to assessment of which she can share with us from the lockdown and also since March 2020. Shin?
Okay, thank you, Miss. So as a business student during the online learning, I would say it's kind of challenging as the exam structure has changed ever since online learning. Previously, in hall exams, you have like 2 to 3 hours to finish a certain structured questions, but now moving on to virtual settings, we are given 24 hours. Although 24 hours, there's like an increase in the timing, but the word length and the difficulty of the question indeed has changed as well. And I would say it is very tough because the word length that we're given is like around 2,500 words to 3,000 words. And I would say it's like finishing a coursework in one day. Because previously, if you're given an essay or research paper, you finish it in like a month. But now you're given that 24 hours to finish this paper. And sometimes we have back-to-back exams. So like students, we very tired. Like you have just finished 24 hours to finish one research paper and the next day you have to continue again. So I would say that's the most challenging part in terms of like the whole, I would say well-being status of myself. And but aside from the online like assessments, I would say the hybrid learning is actually very useful. I would say it's not as bad as we thought. Like after asking my friends like about how they thought about during this whole online learning, and they actually like online learning, especially the part where we have like recorded lectures. So students actually can refer back to recordings when they realize that there's some certain points that they miss out, and these materials can be used to revise. So, and also there's actually an increase in the response of in emails from lecturers. They respond even faster, even more efficient. And you can actually see that the students are getting more and more better in email writing and how to communicate with their lecturers and their classmates in a formal way. So, and for the weightage of the online assessment, there's also a certain change in it. Previously, we'll be having like 30% maybe coursework and 70% finals. But now, since we're moving on to like virtual settings, there's actually a change, like having 50-50% in coursework and finals, or sometimes 100% coursework. And with removing the final exam, I would say open book test. So overall, I would say it's not bad, like the whole online learning, aside from the challenge increase in the exam papers, but the overall learning and the resources that we can actually reach out to is actually improved. Yeah, that's from my sharing.
Shin, thank you so much for that sharing. Now, can we hear from Rai with regards to assessment? There has been a concern, Rai, right, with regards to whether the assessments they have fulfilled their learning outcome. What have you got to say about this?
Hello, everyone. Good morning to the expert panel. So in terms of the assessment of learning, I would say that I'll just start with online learning. Online learning has allowed us to take exams in our own convenience. Like at the university, we've been having software used such as Moodle and safe browsing modes and all that simulates how the traditional exams were taken before. and without jeopardizing the academic integrity of it. So I've also noticed that recorded lectures, an important aspect of online learning nowadays, has immensely helped students in terms of reviewing previous lectures and revisions for exams, which wouldn't have been able to be conducted in like a normal traditional way of learning. Like recorded lectures do help students. That's one important thing to note about. And in terms of online learning at the university, we've been using Microsoft Teams even before the pandemic. So then for us, it was quite an easy and smooth transition from the traditional way of learning, as we were usually using Microsoft Teams, to the online learning as using Microsoft Teams itself. And then in terms of giving students chance to study like at their own pace, in online learning has they can complete their program even faster than they would have been it would have been done in traditional learning. Like this eventually increases the productivity and the efficiency of the students' learning capabilities. And one thing I wanted to point out that we used to have group assignments before, and nowadays as well in online learning we have group assignments. That's one thing that has really been a small setback in terms of making assignments less productive while working with a group online. So basically we were taught like to use collaborating platforms such as GitHub, Trello, Discourse to carry out group assignments. That would, I won't say it's the best way to do, but it's the most effective way to do it in terms of online learning nowadays. And yeah, in terms of the online assessments, while we had some uncertainty at first, we've gained the confidence of the reliability, the validity, and even the transparency of the process throughout the 18 months that we've gone through in the lockdown. So that's pretty much my views on how the assessment of learning in terms of, yeah.
Right, thank you so much for that sharing. Now, can we hear from Akmal? Akmal, can you still remember when it was announced by the ministry that 15th of March 2020, bam, emergency, right? So everybody will have to do something about it, preparation to go home and things like that. So in terms of assessment, I'm sure it clicked then. How will we be assessed this semester? Can you share with us?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Mazura. So first of all, good morning, everyone. So basically, from my experience for the past 18 months or where it all started, actually at first I kind of enjoyed online learning in the earlier stages of the pandemic. But later moving on, when the university changed, the percentage of coursework from 50-50 to 60-40 for 40% finals, I do first think that it is a good effort towards helping students in ensuring that the learning process will be efficient. But as time goes by, I started to realize that by increasing the coursework percentage, it just increased another level of workload for us as students. And as an engineering students, I do kind of question, some subjects that have 3 to 4 video making assignments. Actually, video making assignments is good that we can sharpen our skills, we upgrade ourselves. But to look back, is it a really convenience for students? Because, to record, when you say about video presenting in a video, lecturers might think that and we might think that we need to do it perfectly because we can record it more and more. But it just shows that when you wanted to be perfect in one assignment, it took a longer time. And sometimes we do have to record in the late night because there's no disturbance, I can see. So that's one part of it. If you are doing an individual work, it's just fine because it's your own time. But when you have a group assignment of video making, there's always one person that will have another level of workload because that person will need to edit and compile everyone's video into one. So I just believe that, previously physically we have only like 8 to 5 class. Now we are going to have like, 24 hours is always our class and assessment. And then my experience is that a lot of assignments stack up each other, and the due dates is pretty much near to each other. So actually it makes us more stressed, and we could not enjoy the learning process, as we thought that I don't want us to be the students that, as long as I finish this assignment, then it's okay and it's done. I wanted the assessment and the assignment to be something that I can learn from, not just do it. And for the online examinations, there's problem with the transparency of it, the trust of the universities and the students, and it's hard actually to actually conduct an online exam with no cheating and such. It's very hard to do it. So it might be better that if university cannot trust the student to have online examinations, why not just change it to coursework? But then the student need to understand that when 100% coursework, the burden and the workload that you are going to be. As long as it is well planned, as for the online learning and also the examinations, I think that everyone can balance their life, and inshallah it will be a better learning process in the future.
Thank you, Akmal. Can we move to Candace and see what she has to say with regards to assessment?
Good morning, everyone, again. So this is my perspective as a science student. As the moderator has mentioned, I learn veterinary medicine. So a lot of the assessments going forward online has been pretty interesting. As mentioned by my colleagues, there's a lot of video assessments, very heavy coursework, which is challenging for us to catch up on, because firstly, they're very heavy, and sometimes because the faculty would like to replace the time loss, or rather the effort in physical class. So we are given assessments that are very mentally challenging to do. And sometimes even the carry marks for that are very, very small. So it is quite a challenge for us. We do enjoy the assessments. However, it's very, very difficult for science students, because if there is no hands-on, there's a lot of practical skills that we are unable to replace, even though we've done video assignments, even though we've watched videos to do reports from to accommodate or to compensate for our practical skills. So I believe that could be improved. Personally, for me, I found that when I did my assessments, since it was very challenging and since it was very heavy, it was a good learning time for me to work on my references, to read more journals, especially in doing those kind of heavy assessments. But again, it's not the same when it comes to the hands-on practical side for us, and for my seniors as well who are doing especially surgery. Nothing during the online learning can beat the hands-on experience for that. So that has been my experience so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Candice. Now, can we hear from Lazarus? What are your thoughts about the assessments which have taken place in the last few months?
Okay, good morning, everyone. As other students have stated, there were quite some differences in the assessments during the online learning. And I would say that it actually favored some students in a way, but it disfavored others, right? There were many assignments and mini projects that were given, which actually helped students in a way, right? Now, there were a lot of online platforms, like online submissions that were giving, which I believe helped to improve the IT skills of students. So I believe that the coursework aspect, where they had to do a lot of online submissions, had to use a lot of websites and all that, I believe it actually helped to improve the IT skills of students like that. And then the mini projects too also help to give some hands-on experience like that. So generally for the coursework area, I actually think that actually helped to, especially from a postgraduate perspective, it actually helped to give students more hands-on experience. But then the exams was a major challenge, of others have stated. The time was very limited. There were more strict guidelines that were giving. And then there was also much pressure on students to be able to complete within that time. So I believe the exam wasn't so effective in measuring the understanding of students during the online training. Yeah, but the assessment for the coursework area, I believe it actually helped, especially in the postgraduate studies. Yeah.
Great. Lazarus, thank you so much for that opinion. So with that, I would just like to summarize the highlights of assessments, where I believe a few of them would have agreed with me that at the end of the day, the students were able to communicate it well with their lecturers, were able to use all the means that they could, all right? And with all the etiquette in communication, okay, when communicating with your lecturers, right? And also the administrators of your universities. I also noted that you mentioned about the short time of period to do your assessments, also the exams, okay? And on top of that, some of the lecturers thought that because it is online classes, it has to be compensated with many more coursework, okay? But with students in the engineering or MBBS, medicine, veterinary, and all that, more on the hands-on, that's what I'm trying to say, it's going to be tough, all right? So yes, we hear you that. And let us move on to the next area here with regards to the student support services. Okay, let us think back whether you actually got adequate support services. Now here, it can be outlined as physical, okay, social, financial assistance, recreational, online facilities where that will help your academic and non-academic activities, whether you also received academic and also non-academic counseling, okay, and anything with regards to health services. Right, so can I hear from Sheen, please?
Yes. Okay, in terms of student support, I would say the students actually do enjoy it, like me, myself as well. And while we're carrying out a survey, in the survey at the end, there's actually an increase in the satisfaction in student support. So I would say what boosts the most is in terms of the increase in events that helps the students. So from my experience in my university, there's an increase in having professional development related type of events. There's workshops and like different programs for us to improve our own skills. And not just that, they actually help us a lot in well-being support, because although we kind of enjoy online learning because there's recordings and everything, but there's a certain burnout as months goes by. So I really feel like the well-being support is very much needed, and they do provide us this by giving different talks and small exercises, self-care exercise, and like relationship talk, and how to take care of yourself, like how to prevent having like eye sore, staying long time at the laptop. This how small events actually is very much appreciated by the students. So I would say in terms of well-being support is very well done from my experience. And also not just that, there's actually an increase in bonding with my own personal tutor, which we can know as an academic advisor. So we actually have more sessions to interact and to ask about our concerns in learning. And it might be just outside of academic as well, like about family and friends and careers. So I'll say that in terms during the whole online learning virtual settings, the support in terms of like the mental state, there's definitely an increase in it. So yeah, that's like my experience on this.
Thank you, Sheen. I'm glad to hear that the bonding has increased between you and your personal tutor, and I believe other students also will share this. Now, can I hear from Rai? What would you say with regards to the student support services?
I'd start like by saying in terms of my personal experience, as well as some experience gathered from other students, friends, and all. So basically, we've seen an increase in student support in terms of from the management with a constant means of communication between the university and students. There were some students who were facing financial instability and they were helped with hardship funds. And also there was, I think, an emergency unit set up in case any students was having any health issue or suspected with COVID-19. Even the university was liaising with embassies and airlines on departure of students to their home country, and also for local students who want to move back to their hometown, because, you know, at the very beginning of the pandemic, this was quite a very confusing situation, very uncertain situation. Also, there was like a dedicated arrival control center that was set up to launch the assisting of returning students, international students, even local students, as well as I think in terms of the university, from the university side, there has been platform setups such as Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp groups, and around-the-clock hotlines and emergencies to attend like queries and difficulties students have been facing since the beginning of the very first MCO in March 2020. Also, there were some friends who received food items from the university who were flying back home or who were in self-isolation, and who were people who needed help, basically. As well as there was most of the departments at the university, admin department, tech department, they were all responsive from I think very late night, I think, or it was even 24/7 at some point. And also I think to broadcast news and all, to share with students in terms of the progress of the MCO and all. There were live updates on the website. Students were asking queries, including personal queries as well. Yeah, one thing I would like to point out in terms of the time zone itself, like there was a lot of international students who went back home, and there's some students, for example, in the African continent or even the South American continent, where the time zone is really difficult for them to follow classes. So in that terms, the attendance were more flexible. Attendance were taken in terms of homeworks, mini assignments, and all. So we've seen like there has been a sort of flexibility in terms of attendance to accommodate these students. Also to come up with a solution, there was the asynchronous teaching method that was implemented for them. Also, there was one student who I've gotten a conversation into. He's from Myanmar. And if I'm not if you guys remember, there was a military coup in Myanmar early February last year or this year. So these students, the university made special arrangements for them to help them catch up with missed classes. Also, they were financially helped as well. And one more thing, I want to give a lot of kudos to lecturers. Lecturers were available during school hours, and students were able to book online consultations with them to solve their academic queries, and if they have any questions in terms of if ever they've missed classes and all. So yeah, that's in terms of my experience and the experience of other students that I'm sharing right now. That will be it from me.
Great, Roy. Thank you so much for that sharing. I'm a lecturer, therefore I feel so excited listening to all this, all right? But let's move on. Let's hear more from Akmal. Akmal, what have you got to say with regards to student support services?
I'm going to say this from the information that I got from my friends, because for the past 18 months, majority of the time I'm in campus. So I don't have much trouble having, you know, the internet access and such. So I don't have much problem with that. And from friends that are actually in the rural areas, you know, there's some problems with them having their internet connections, and that already disturbed their momentum for the online classes. So, but Alhamdulillah, the university had opened the campus for students that are in need or are not in the conducive place. They can always apply to come to the campus. It's just that I do understand the concern of management, whereby we are, you know, as a student representative council, I do understand the management concern whereby we are afraid to have PKPD in our campus, like how my campus was. So I do understand that it costs a lot, and the health and the well-being of the students also will be jeopardized. So I do understand the concern, and from other than that, it is basically about on a positive side where the library had started their e-library. There's always online notes from our e-learning platform. As Shane mentioned now, your connection between your academic advisors, because when I was in first year, how they refer academic advisor was like they are your parents in campus. So basically, whatever problem you had academically or anything related to your life, actually you can share with your academic advisor, and they actually know how the method to help you. It's just the method. The concern that I have among students is that the student did not know or did not want to come forward and ask for help. Instead, they just told their friends. Sometimes your friends can just hear you guys, not help. So it is very important for me as a student representative council that you guys channel your need through a proper platform, because I know university will definitely help your schools, your academic advisors. There's always some kind of help that we can actually manage and discuss to help you guys. So one important things that I want to highlight that for the past 18 months, I hope that the development of internet connection, or I can say the technology development we can move faster. I can say that because some rural areas still did not get the coverage that needed for online classes. So I believe that the authority that handle this kind of thing can move a bit faster in helping, because actually it's quite late already for the past 18 months. So actually it's very late, but it's never too late for something, because you might not know the future. So I just hope that the development and also the coverage can be well covered so that everyone can enjoy their learning online. Apart from that, student services, support services have been great in my campus. It's just matter that students, come out and ask for help, because universities cannot knock on every door that, ask for your help. So ask what you need for help. So you guys need to come out and channel your problems to the proper channel. So that's my point.
Well, thank you so much for that sharing. I remember Malaysia is not one of those countries who actually rated online learning, blended learning highly. And also the perception of having classes online, it's something like something in a dream. But come March 2020, Zoom, we have all this emergency, everything is being done remotely, right? And suddenly our parents also believe that you cannot miss your classes, be it online, you will still have to go into whether it's Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, all right? So suddenly there's a change there. So now I would like to ask Candice now. Candice, with regards to these student support services, how did you find, in your experience, how did you find the feedback, or whether you get anyone from the university asking whether you are all right with the assistance being rendered? Can you share with us something with regards to that?
That's a very interesting question about whether anyone from the management or anyone from the hierarchs are actually checking in with us. I would say to a certain point, yes. I highly agree with Akmal regarding reaching out to your academic advisors, because in the end of the day, they are especially your main guidance on campus. So personally for me, I think my academic advisor is actually in the discourse right now, but I felt that I could reach out to him. In fact, lecturers were more flexible with their timing of us reaching out to them in terms of student support. So there were a lot of lecturers who were more understanding of where we're coming from, and especially like if we are asking them, okay, I need an extension because I don't have the proper facilities right now to do the assignment or to do the exam. They're quite understanding. And also for me, from my university, they actually provided virtual counseling. So that really helped a lot in terms of students who were burned out. I've also noted from my friends who said that the buffer time of hybrid learning was not there, because sometimes we will have to go back to campus and then sometimes we have to go back home. So there was an easy burnout there. But however, the ones who did reach out to virtual counseling anyway were really helped a lot. But yes, I did note that some also, like what Akmal said, did not reach out to the academic counselors because pre-pandemic wise, there was no establishment of relations. So I think that moving forward, this could be a good time for all students to actually reach out to them, because if anything, they are our main communicators, especially to our faculty, to our university. If we have any problems, we reach out to them and say, this is what we're struggling with. I also would like to note in terms of for students in rural areas, yes, the university did give us an option to go back to hostel for students who had very terrible internet connection. However, it was noted that the hostel had a limited hostel capacity. So those who decided to stay home because of that, or because at that time the cases were so high, they were so afraid to go back on campus, it was noted that the main support given was the 1 GB per day that was given by the government. So they did still struggle a lot in terms of internet connection when they attend classes. And, there's, I believe, there was a friend that told me that 1 GB could only provide for 2 hours of classes, especially if you need your video on. And also I noted that because of the long hours for online lectures, student participation wasn't there, the attention wasn't there. However, in terms of Q&A, a lot of students managed to participate through the microphone and screen. They felt more comfortable. But yeah, I think the support for rural area students could be better in terms of especially the ones who stays home. But that's my experience. Thank you.
Candice, thank you so much for that sharing. You mentioned the challenges by the students who are now in the rural areas. Okay, we take note of that. So let's move on to Lazarus. What are your thoughts with regards to the student support services rendered in the last 18 months?
All right, thank you. As Rai and Candice have stated, we receive more support, actually from lecturers, right? Lecturers were more flexible, and that gave more students the capacity to learn, because sometimes due to time constraints and sometimes because of lack of confidence, some students find it difficult to be able to approach lecturers and ask questions like that. But the online platform during that time gave students the ability to be able to ask questions they may have about the course. So there was increased support from lecturers. And then also there were more trainings that were given by universities on how to access online materials. More webinars were given, usually during the physical training, maybe just once in a semester would that course be given, but it was given during the online period, I think around 2 months interval. There were trainings over and over again on how to access online resources and how to use the database of the university. And I believe that was a great support in helping students to be able to access more materials. Yeah. But then one of the areas where some students, especially international students, desired support that didn't really come in was in the area of finances. Yeah, some students decided that because of the economic situation that came with the COVID-19, that there could be some kind of subsidy to the tuition fee. Maybe some percentage should have been reduced during that time. But that didn't really come through. So that was an area of support that actually international students really desired, a kind of reduction in tuition, which didn't really come in. Yeah, but generally there was a lot of checking up, especially from supervisors, checking up on their students, finding out their well-being, if they need help, physical needs like that. So yeah, so I would say the support was really great during the pandemic.
Lazarus, thank you so much for that sharing. Now, I would just like to wrap up this area here before we move on to the next area. We also heard aspects mentioned, this word burnt out. Wow, that's a big word, okay? Maybe we will thrash on that later on, okay, burnt out. That was mentioned by Shin with regards to all the workload given, okay, the assignments and all that. But I also noted down that there were health talks, workshops conducted in most of the universities, okay, for students with regards to either its academic or non-academic matters. And also with regards to other challenges like the time zones where the flexibility of submitting assignments or even to lock in or clock in for your attendance, okay, that's very critical, okay, especially now. And also with regards to the connecting with your academic advisors, okay, for those who at this point of time feel that now I can connect with my lecturers, that's good. But for those of them who did not want to do it at the very beginning, I think this has gone from bad to something good. They would have changed their style of communicating. They would now have they are brave enough, let's put it that way, they're brave enough to contact the academic advisors and to reach out to the other administrators and the other authorities in the campus itself in order to move forward in their studies, okay? Yes, with that, shall we move on a little bit more on the educational resources? Lazarus, you mentioned earlier about having trainings, guide on how to use Teams and how to access online resources, yeah, Lazarus? So would you like to also top up a little bit on what you have said there with regards to, for example, software or any other learning materials? Would you like to add a little bit on that, Lazarus?
Yes, all right, thank you. Yes, regarding educational resources that were provided during the pandemic, yeah, there was an increase in educational resources. As I said, more webinars were being given on how to access online materials. And then actually, there were more software and applications that were made accessible to students. Some universities were able to partner with some software providing companies to provide software and also trainings for students during that period, which I believe was really commendable. Applications for different tasks were being made available for students. Yeah, so there was quite an increase in resources, yeah, in that area. Yeah, but then some students do had a bit of a challenge, especially practical, those that were doing practical studies on some resources that they were not able to get during that period. Yeah, so I have a student who is into fashion designing, who desired that maybe a sewing machine could have been made accessible for him to be able to carry out his own designs at home, which he was not able to access. And so the university was not really willing to release some equipment, some small equipment like that could actually help the students at home. Yeah, so I believe that if some practical equipment were given that could actually help students do some practicals, I think would have been very great. Yeah, and also there were some systems. Some universities have some systems with some licensed software in school that I believe would have also been able to, if those systems would have been released to students, would have also been able to help them to carry out some of their work at home. Yeah. So generally, when it comes to electronic materials, universities really did great with that. There was an increase in educational resources, but then practical equipment to be able to do some of these things at home were not really provided.
Thank you, Lazarus. That's a good point you have highlighted. For students who needed to use, like what you mentioned, the sewing machine, okay, or maybe any other equipments, right? If they are into technical vocational studies, for example, all right? So this could be a challenge to stay at home, right? And to, at the same time, need to do assignments. Okay, yes, thank you so much for bringing up this, Lazarus. Can we move to Candace and C with regards to educational resources, please?
Thank you. So from what I gathered from my friends, mostly yes, generally we say that there were general educational resources provided for support of online learning. It's especially noted that we were given free access to online textbooks. The university actually opened up a lot of websites for us to access a lot of online resources, especially textbooks and journals. But I do agree with Lazarus on the part where equipment was really, really necessary for practicals. And I did note from the survey that I did on educational resources that a lot of my friends did highlight on financial aid or limited financial capacity to carry out a lot of the online learning. So I think in that kind of support area, that it's very much needed to be improved. And personally for me, there were not any workshops so far to educate students on especially how to use Microsoft Teams. So mostly we were given the option to use Zoom or Google Meet, but I did note that a lot of others use Microsoft Teams. So maybe in that case, like what Lazarus has mentioned, it will be good for there to be a standard workshop to not only given to students or maybe also to lecturers as well, for especially if online learning were to move forward to help us learn how to use these correctly and properly. And one more thing is that in terms of I think physical facilities, so Lazarus has already mentioned that equipment and everything is very much needed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Candice, for that sharing. Now, can we move on to Akmal? Akmal, what have you got to say with regards to the educational resources throughout the lockdown, the pandemic, and all that?
So I do agree with what Lazarus and Candice had said. In terms of machine, because I'm from an engineering background, so we don't really use machine very much. We use software pretty much on our daily basis if required. It's just that not only what, as Candice said, the financial capacity and also the limit of the students to even purchase machines, and from my part is that some software do cost a lot, like Civil 3D, it costs a lot of money. However, it is not emphasized yet in the university to use Civil 3D. However, that I look back because I'm having an internship. Actually, our education now is not progressing along or parallel with the industry. However, I believe that, like Candice said, that the open opportunity of online learning, online platform, webinars and talks, workshops. So I do understand in that concern, and I also recently used linked learning because there's always certificate given at the end of the session. So other than that, I believe that university had pretty much stayed the same. They only open like the libraries from the books, the slides from the lecturers. I believe that we could use more of in-house videos, I can see, because some of our laboratory works, actually we use YouTube videos, which is from other universities, other states, and not even sometimes not even Malaysia. So I do hope that we can really, because it's already it's going to be 2 years in a few months, but why haven't we see the progress whereby we can have our lab virtually or in-house laboratory? Because I believe that every campus have their big lab that costs a lot of money. Why don't we utilize that machineries that we had in campus and make our own in-house training video instead of we outsource it from other states? So I believe that is the part where we come short. So I believe that in the near future, I hope that we can actually produce our own learning materials, I can say, instead of we borrow it from other people. So that's my point.
Well, thank you so much. You have highlighted a number of interesting points there, right? With regards to in-house videos, for example, I like that question. Why don't we have our in-house videos? Because we are going to be almost 2 years now, okay, with this pandemic, right? And of course, with the hands-on, for those who are into technical vocational training courses, engineering, or even computing and all that, simulation perhaps is the answer. It may be of a high investment there. And this will also cater to not only students from Malaysia, or if you are in Malaysia, but also for students who are interested to study in the Malaysian institutions, but being abroad, okay? Simulation or learning labs and all that, right? So we do have that also. It's just that at this point of time, where are we? Right. Now, can I quickly hear from Rai? Rai, what would you like to say with regards to the educational resources rendered to you and your friends throughout the pandemic?
Well, I'm just going to start with a small experience I've had last year. Everything was normal. I started an iOS module where I have to develop an iOS app, and then the lockdown hit, and then everything went online. And personally, I'm a Windows user. I do not have a MacBook. So basically, that was one of the most challenging part of the online learning I've faced. But then basically, it was in a span of 1 week where the university had managed to implement a virtual lab, basically a lab that you would have used physically at the university. You can now use it virtually on your laptop using a virtual machine. So that really helped me in terms of fulfilling my assignments. But then again, these modules, to make it more efficient, they were switched from being an iOS module to basically developing Android apps, which can be done basically on Windows laptop as well as iOS laptops. So that's one of the things that I wanted to just share with you guys. But then again, as Lazarus said earlier, like even at my university, they have partnered with quite a number of industries in terms of software and applications that were made available to students. And then I think that some people are speaking about like the interactivity in classes on the chat. In terms of that, I would say that classes were trying to make interactive in terms of adding make Kahoot applications where students can interact amongst themselves as well as with the lecturer, and make it more fun in terms of learning as well. And one more thing I've received from a student when I was like asking around, Microsoft Teams is not straightly available in China. And students based there, they basically receive support from the technical department in order to make full use of Microsoft Teams and other softwares that are not available in China. That's one thing I wanted to point out. And then in terms of the educational resources, at the very beginning, research papers were very limited when we moved to online classes. But then again, the university library made all the required arrangements in terms for students to access a wide range of journal articles, ebooks, e-conference proceedings, and others. And yeah, that would be all from me in terms of the educational resources that we've received.
Right, thank you. Can we hear now from Shin? Shin, have you got anything to share with us with regards to educational resources?
Yes. So after like asking a few of my classmates and friends, and we coming from I would say 1 year to social science background, I would say on online learning, the resources support is actually there. And I can actually see that the lecturers put more efforts in putting up more reading materials on our learning portal. So we are kind of different. We don't use Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom to have our classes. We have it on Blackboard. Previously, we have it on Vision, a learning platform, and now we actually just moved to Canvas, another learning platform, where all our materials, like from the previous semester, and recordings and extra reading materials and databases are all on that platform. So I would say, and now actually I'm a student who is working on my own final year dissertation. I would say the resources provided is actually there. And our university have actually given us support in giving us a very big database website, which contains more than 230 portals there for us to use. So I would say the support is there in the educational resources, but I would like to emphasize that it's actually different. Although when we're carrying out surveys, our supervisors will be there to help us to send it out to all the students in the campus and everything, but it actually hits different when you're actually carrying out survey interviews face-to-face and on virtual settings. The soft skills that you actually learn while carrying out an actual interview with a person face-to-face is very different. So I would say in terms of that skill, we're kind of concerned, but in terms of the resources, material support is there. So that's from my sharing.
Thank you, Sheen. I hear some strange notes there. At the beginning, some students, they liked having classes online, and other students, they don't like having online classes. They want to have physical classes, one-to-one meeting the lecturers. Yeah, I'm hearing two different tones here. Okay, but anyway, let's move on to our next area on program management. Okay, very quickly, Lazarus, what can you say with regards to governance in terms of the leadership of your organization, or in communicating the changes to be made, because change can be made so fast, okay, throughout this situation. So in terms of emergencies and all that. So what can you say with regards to the announcements made, the guidelines shared, Lazarus?
All right. Regarding communicating information, yeah, the school maintained a social media platform. So most times information were passed through social media, also through the school email, like that. So this is how information were really passed. And so basically it was the responsibility of the students to make sure that they keep checking their emails constantly to be able to get updates like that. Yeah, but yeah, I think those were the platforms that were used to pass information. Though there were some complaints about the timing that some of those information were passed. For example, some were passed maybe in the around midnight hour, 11 p.m., 12 a.m. So sometimes the students were not really online at that moment, so to be able to receive such information. Yeah, so so I think there could be an adjustment in the timing in which information are passed. But then I feel that the university is great in passing information using the social media platforms and also through email.
Lazarus, I just would like to clarify, when you say the timing there, are you saying that the announcement can come out at 12 midnight and actions to be taken from that announcement will take effect, for example, 9 o'clock the next morning? Is that what you mean by the timing is not good?
No. Usually there are some days spacing for it to be carried out. Yeah, but usually when it comes at night, maybe some students are not paying attention, and then to be able to get the notification at that time. So maybe they're not really active online at that time to be able to grab the information that is being passed. But usually there's a time space for it to be implemented.
All right, okay, I got that. Thank you, Lazarus. Now, can we move on to Candice? Candice, what would you like to comment with regards to the program management?
So I think I would just wrap up on what was already mentioned. In terms of program management, it was satisfactory. I believe that our university did the very best in terms of handing down the information to the students. I note on Lazarus' point on in terms of timing, yes, sometimes we receive information in the middle of the night only to know the next morning. And this may be a struggle, especially for students who come from especially Sabah, Sarawak, Labuan, or even overseas, in which they would have to arrange better in terms of, let's say, if we're given information to go back to campus, sometimes the timing makes them have a limited time in order for them to prepare. So yes, I think timing in terms of from the very top all the way to the very bottom could be improved. And in terms of program management by our educators, I think also they did their very best as well. A lot of my friends did note that some educators were definitely more comfortable in giving pre-recorded lectures and some even more comfortable in giving physical lectures. But if online learning were to continue, I think it would be very important that communication and feedback between lecturers and students could be improved, especially in terms of feedback of assessments, of our exams. So there should be a lot of online communications going on. Of course, WhatsApp is not the best way to disturb our educators, especially in off working hours. But I believe that emails, other platforms could be used in terms of online communication. So there should be more communication and more back and forth there. But other than that, the program management was pretty much satisfactory. Again, we did have limitation as veterinary students because there's only so much we can do online. Eventually, we would have to go back to having hands-on unless there is a virtual lab session, which again, is limited to how much we can learn. But yes, that's all. Oh, and also webinars. I think our faculty actually gave us a lot of participation in webinars, and that actually enabled us to expand our horizon in terms of education and whatever we've learned. So I think that was a very good program management development in terms of online learning.
Okay, Candice, thank you so much for that sharing. Now, moving on to the social aspects. Akmal, what is your opinion with regards to the governance on what can be done, what cannot be done, okay, in terms of social interactions among your friends, okay? At the same time, how did the university carried out their communication in terms of continuing the learning life skills?
I could say that this falls under the extracurricular activity, the outside class learning. So basically, as in my campus, everything goes as normal as it is. You know, we conduct thousands of programs in one semester. Everybody took parts, the management, the students. So I believe that the learning experience or the learning experience continues. It's just the changes of methods, I guess, from physical to online. For such that we always had this, physical camp, and now it is conducted online. So I believe that we still had the learning experience. However, but I believe that the experience-wise, you cannot conduct activities to the fullest. There's always a setback for online learning. However, I believe that this is the time that we connect to other parts of the world, because it's online. We don't have to fly to a country to have an exchange student. You can always be virtually connected to other parts of the world. So that's the best part of it. I'm very keen towards the development of life skills, because I believe that now students are getting smarter each and every day. For flats are not a random things anymore right now in this era. I believe that we need to top up on our life skills, and to look back for the first year I entered university, and see my seniors having the charisma, the aura of a young professional. That will inspire me the most. So I hope that we can keep up with the good work in conducting and giving life experience to students, because after all, we are not actually universities are not actually supposed to produce exam-oriented students. We are actually preparing our future leaders of the nations and future professionals of the nations. So I do hope that the students could be professionally groomed in that case, and hope that they can stand and also be great wherever they are in the future. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Akmal, thank you so much. Now, Roy, I have a question for you, just to round out a little bit with regards to social aspects. From your experience, how do you think the student engagement can be increased, whether it's between the staff, the administrators of the university with lecturers, or with students, or even lecturers and students? What are your thoughts?
Personally, I think that right now it's quite limited in terms of interacting with students, lecturers, or even students. But yeah, I'd say that all universities, the clubs and societies of each and every university need to still be active at the moment, even though that the current activities that they used to conduct has been disrupted. Still do daily meetings or even weekly meetings to keep in touch with those members of these clubs, just for the sake that to keep that bond and don't let students to be on their own, because you know there's a lot of international students who lives in dorms, in private accommodations. Most of them live alone. They don't have friends and all. So this is just one of the elements that brings them together at some point of time, even though they have their own classes, classmates, and all group assignments. Because you know the health, the mental state of each student is really important, as well as the physical activities that they do. We've tried to accommodate a lot in terms of mental states, carried out webinars to sensitize students and all. But then again, we unintentionally forget that the physical aspect of a student is really important as well. So I think we can come up with something inventive or innovative in terms to accommodate this need of student, because you know we all have gained some extra pounds during the lockdown, and that's not really a good thing in terms of the physical health of everyone. So I think if we can come up with something that can help students in this aspect, would be really, really great.
Right, thank you so much for that answer. Now, Shin, I would like to just get your opinion with regards to this matter. You know very well that after 15th of October, we can go back to campus. Yeah. Now, with regards to the social interaction, some of the students, for example, they joined March 2020. They have not met their friends at all physically, nor did they have met their lecturers, nor would have they have stepped in their own campus, right? So what is your opinion here in our preparations to get the students to socialize as you know, your generation would know? Okay, so what are your thoughts there?
Okay, thank you for the question, Miss. So yes, I'm aware that there are some new students who joined during the online virtual settings, and now knowing that we're going back to campus, some students might feel like not used to it, because like for us who used to study on campus, we're like, oh, we're just going back to the normal life. But for certain students, especially new students, for them it's like getting used to a new way of learning again. Like having hall exams, it might be something very new for them. It's different for us who are going to be graduate. And I would say how the staff or I would say lecturers can help in this is really, I would say it's slowly changing the exam structures, especially on this. Like what I mentioned previously, as a business student, we have like 24 hours exam. So it'll be kind of a culture shock for students who, when if they go back to hall exam and knowing that you only have 3 hours to do a paper, I think that will be a different type of culture shock for them. And in terms of social interactions, I would say I'm lucky enough that my university, they adapt to the whole online virtual settings very fast, including the students. So like what was mentioned by Rai and Akmal about the club and societies and the COCO events, I would say all of them are trying very hard to stay active and to engage the new students, to interact with their senior students. And although the sports club kind of have a hard time at the beginning, but eventually, like what Akmal mentioned, students are getting more and more smarter. So eventually they find a way out. Like, for example, there's one tennis club, how they actually engage with students is like, you can try to hit the wall and like to count how many times you can do it. It's kind of a challenge thing to make sure that all the students are engaged. in a very creative ways. And the clubs really put a lot of effort in exploring different platforms like GatherTown, like just stepping aside from just Microsoft Teams having meetings. They really try out a lot. So I would say it's not just an effort by the lecturers and staff, but also from the students or the student council, and like I would say the whole community should be involved, like to make sure that the new students won't feel unfamiliar while going back to campus. Yeah, that's from my sharing.
Okay, Shin, thank you so much. I'm sure we have gone through, we have lots and lots of questions, and it's just that now it's time to unlearn. We learned to use online resources, online platform, and now it's time to unlearn and relearn what we have been doing all these years. Okay, now just to wrap up this Discourse Series 3, where we are now discussing the emergency remote online student learning amidst lockdown. Perhaps each of you can actually share with all of us here 3 things that worked well throughout the last 18 months or so, and 2 things that did not work well, and exactly what do you want from the university? Perhaps we can start with Lazarus. Is that okay?
All right, thank you. 3 things that I observed that worked well during the online learning was the program leadership in terms of delivering lectures and teaching. I believe it was well organized, the way teachers conducted their classes, being able to give their lessons. I believe it was great. It was well organized. Then student support in terms of providing online resources, as we stated before, online trainings, e-materials, and some softwares as well to be able to carry out different tasks. I believe that was highly commendable by the universities. And then another thing that I felt was effective was in some areas was the coursework. The fact that especially for postgraduate students, where there was increased coursework more than tests, that gave them more hands-on training regarding their course and their program. So these are 3 things that I believe worked very well. And then the 2 things that I feel didn't work so well was one was the examination, the way examinations were carried out in the online training with limited time, and then a very tense environment. Yeah, so more work was given with a very limited time. So I believe that's something that could be improved upon. And then the program leadership to support students that are outside the country. I believe that's something that could be improved upon regarding timing, different time zones, and having classes that were at midnight, and also being able to provide support maybe for practical work and being able to help them to carry out their programs outside the country of Malaysia. Yeah, I think that is something that can be improved on. Yeah, then finally, the final suggestion is bringing policies that promote the social and the mental and emotional well-being of students during the online learning. I believe, as we've discussed, is something very important and should be looked at by universities, not only how to help the students academically, but how to help them socially, emotionally, and their mental health. Yeah, so that's my suggestion. Thank you.
That's awesome, Lazarus. So can we move to Candace now? What are your thoughts? What worked well? What didn't work? And your suggestion?
So, well, I think one of my friends did tell me that his lifestyle actually got better in terms of online learning, because when you're at home, you get to eat lunch even during lectures. So his schedule, his timing of being able to take care of himself was very much a healthy one. So I think that really helped us to actually just take our time to digest things when it came to online online learning. There were, of course, more resources online. A lot of platforms and resources were opened up to us virtually, especially in terms of like things that were paid in the first place that the university actually sponsored for us to be able to access. So that really, really helped us. And also, there were also more opportunities, as I mentioned, webinars, and I am also part of the virtual exchange program right now. So I believe that that really helped a lot for students, because usually exchange programs, we have to go to their country, and that also in terms of finances, in terms of resources, it took a lot from us. So in this way, virtual exchange programs actually opened up a lot of connections for us to the outside world. So I think that was a very lovely thing that came out from online learning. So two things that really didn't pan out for me was that communication could have been better, be it in terms of lectures with students, students with students, or even management with students. I believe that as what Ahmad has mentioned just now, and Lazarus also, timing and constant communication is very important. So I believe that could have been improved. And also transitioning from online learning to physical, or as well as hybrid. So both of them, they were very abrupt. A lot of my friends said that they were very burnout because we're very used to online learning. And then suddenly when we're going back to campus, it's suddenly, we have to have the mentality that, okay, it's back to normal life. Everything's back to normal. But because we're so used to that mentality of, okay, you know, class starts at 9, it's okay, I can wake up at 8:55 and go to class. So I think the transition back to normal life should be more, should be done slowly in terms of that, instead of more abrupt. And one thing that I wish that it could do is that please don't turn off all the virtual resources that you've given to us during online learning, especially when we go back to physical campus, because in terms of virtual exchange programs, in terms of the things that you've provided for us, the virtual online counseling, it would really, really help students who are able, who don't have the means to reach out physically, being on any terms. But I wish that whatever that we've mentioned that was great during online learning would not be seized during physical learning. Thank you.
Fantastic, Candice. Okay, thank you so much. Akmal, can we hear from you? 3 things didn't work well, yeah? Go on.
So things that work well for students, I can say in generally, that actually we upgrade ourselves, because, you know, online learning, the assessment had changed. You know, I had video making, although that I don't really like video making because it takes a long time to do it, but I just got another skill of video making and poster making. I learned through that, you know, as engineering students, we are not actually keen towards a creative learning. We are always about the structural things. So I believe that that's the good part that the online learning gives to students. Actually, we actually learn a lot that we actually did not want to acknowledge, because we like what I said earlier, that I don't acknowledge the video editing skills because of it takes a long time to do it, and I don't want to be the person responsible to compile all the videos. So that's why in some cases students might not want to actually say that he had the skills to edit, because it will take his time a lot. And other part that actually work well is that, you know, some students are just introverts. So actually the communications during online learning actually help them a lot. I can see that they are very comfortable in their space. They are very comfortable in pointing out their views, their opinions. And like Candice said, that the question and answer sessions is actively participate compared to the physical class. I do agree with that, because I don't have trouble asking questions on the online platform, other than compared to physical class, I reluctant to ask questions. I don't know why, but during online platform, I can ask easily. And alhamdulillah, the lecturers, the educators are keen to answering them. Actually, some of the lecturers are very nice, that they said that you can always WhatsApp me, you can always reach me out outside of the class duration. So I do love about it. And another thing is that actually online learning gave me a good experience, is that actually it opened up humanity basically, where you can see, the counselors take part in ensuring that student well-being is well catered. And then, the NGOs are giving support, the government and looking at these things seriously, because I do understand that a part of academic staff, the well-being and the mental health of students is also important. Actually, it is not only the students. The culture shock that happened 18 months ago is actually for both educators and also students, because some lecturers are not, I can say, not tech savvy, because I'm also not a tech savvy person. So actually, at the first stage, I do understand the hardship that the lecturers undergoes to conduct online classes. And now, as you can see, for the past 18 months, it is actually not a skills that only students acquire. Now, lecturers knows how to record class, how to conduct an online class, how to, there's many platform, Kahoot, there's always, they always coming up with good assessment, I guess, in terms of games, quizzes. So I do understand that it is actually a skill for both of us. So two things that actually did not go well for me is that regarding the mental health again, I believe that it is very sad for me to hear from my friends, because when you are at home, you are not actually entitled as a student only. You are entitled to a son. You are entitled to the title son or daughter at home. So when you have a lot of siblings, you have to actually be responsible for all of them. And for the B40 families, it's actually very hard for them, because they have many siblings, and then everyone need to have the online classes. I do understand their concern on that part, and things why I say that it's not going so well for them is basically because the help could be given faster, I guess, in terms of reaching out to them. But I just hope that I don't want to focus on the bad side. I hope just on this point, on this moment, we can move forward so that we can help them, because it is not entirely all of us can be back to campus. So some are, some of my friends have their part-time job to support their families. So that's another part that did not go so well, because of the financial support is not given. As Belanjawan 2020, there's a very small portions that help students. It's given 100 per year, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. So, and we are not entitled for Bantuan Sara Hidup for the Bujang. So it is basically the financial support is things that not go so well for us students, because actually being a student, we actually use a lot of money. Even you are staying in campus, you are going to use a lot of money to eat, to buy your own things, your own stuff, although it's only for you, but it costs a lot. And one thing that I hope a university can do in the future is that really listen or reach out to students. As candidates once say that it is not always the top to bottom management, it's also bottom to up management. So I believe that universities need to hear to student voices, because now in this era that everyone is saying student empowerment, I do hope that the student empowerment slogan could be emphasized and giving the power to students to voice out their opinion. And I hope that the cultural aspect that, or the older you get, you are always right. Sometimes it's not, it does not mean that you are older, you are always right. So because we are students that undergoes these situations, so I believe that we got the upper hand on the informations. So you need to listen to our voice more. So that's my take.
Right. So apologies. So we have, we have overrun actually. So maybe we can do a quick wrap up.
Yes. We're almost there. Thank you, Jimmy. Okay, can we hear from Rai just to wrap up, and then followed by Shi?
All right, I won't be long. I know that we are running out of time. So I do highly agree with my three friends who just spoke right now to all their points. Most of their points. I just wanted to add that in terms of things that I think worked well was in terms of the support received by the university itself throughout the whole MCOs that we've had so far, in terms financially, emotionally, or in any kind of help that we've received. And secondly, I'd say that personally, and I think all students will agree with me, we've gained a lot of time There's no traveling to university, no hustle and bustle, waiting for the lift, waiting for the taxi to get to the university. So we've gained quite an ample amount of time, which we have been using to do our own stuffs, or even take an extra course, talk to our families, things like that. This, I think, the time gained has made us multitask and be more productive in some way. And as well as, I'd say that how well students have transited from the physical learning and have adapted to the online learning in matter of few days or even weeks, with the help of groups of students, including as well as lecturers, tech staffs, admins, and higher management as well. And I believe that things that didn't go quite well was, I think Akmal just mentioned it, in terms of mental health of students, the social interaction and all. I think the policymakers have to do something about it. We have to come up with some inventive and innovative solution to these things right now. And one thing as well that they've mentioned earlier is that, you know, it's not all the time the university's duty to take care of the students in such times. Students as well have a sense of responsibility to take. If they need help, they have to seek help from the university, voice out their concerns. Otherwise, the university won't know anything about it. So I think that students, please do voice out your concerns. Do tell the university that you're having such problems and all. And to wrap up, I would just say that I think that online learning is becoming a fundamental part of higher education right now. And I think it's here to stay. And I request all the policymakers to think innovatively and come up with policies that will give a better experience to students. And it's time to, I think, revolutionize the whole education system worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, for that wrap up. Now, can we go to Shin? Shin, what are your thoughts? How can we improve from here?
Okay, yes. Like the dear student panel have shared many good things about the online virtual setting learnings. I just want to add on one thing is that another thing that they did well is they're trying to hear more of the student voices. They include the students in several academic meetings, and even right now as well, that we have like hear out student voices. I think that's another like big step that the university are doing to involve student voices in certain changes and arrangements. And the things to improve, I would like to emphasize on is that I'm fully aware that I have friends that are from other universities, and I will say I'm lucky enough that my university adapt well to the system. So, but I'm fully aware that there are friends who are struggling on online learning, especially in terms of the timetable, not just the classes, but exams. I often hear that they have exams on Saturdays and Sundays, or sometimes at night, like after 8 p.m. And not just that, sometimes they have that exam during certain celebration holidays, like on the third day of Chinese New Year or certain 1 week before Hari Raya, like, or maybe even on the day of Christmas. So I feel like this is the one thing that we can actually look into it, that not every universities are fully adapted to the virtual setting and have a standardized structure. And yeah, I would say that's my end on this. Back to you, Miss.
Shin, thank you so much for the wrapping up there. Now, before I pass the playground here to Jimmy, I would just like to wrap up our discourse. Very interesting it was. We can actually continue, but the time is not our friend here, not our best friend. Therefore, I just want to wrap up. We actually managed to cover all the 5 critical areas with regards to the assessment for student learning, and we also talked about the student support services, and all the student panelists mentioned about the education resources that they got from the universities, and we end up with opinion and suggestions with regards to the social aspects. Now, with that, I would like to complete the discourse here and return to you, Jimmy.
Hi, thank you very much to our student panel, and also Mazura for moderating the session. I believe it is a fruitful session, hearing the voices from the students. So next, we'll move on to our next agenda to hear the response from our expert panel. This session will be moderated by Mr. Guy Paring. Guy Paring is passionate about improving the students' experience. He is a Regional Director, Southeast Asia for iGraduate, part of SE Asia for iGraduate, part of Tribal Group, an independent benchmarking consultancy, delivering comparative insights for the education sector and assisting institutions in ensuring their students achieving their objective in employment and citizenship. So Guy is responsible for spearheading their ASEAN operation. He has worked in education for over 25 years in a variety of roles, from teacher to administrator, market researcher to consultant. He previously worked in British Council for 12 years in a variety of roles and has presented many international conferences, including Going Global, USA Apple, and the Commonwealth of Education Ministers. Now I pass the stage to Mr. Guy Paring. Over to you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks so much. And thanks for Prof. Mazura and team of students, which was fantastic insights into the experience over the last 18 months. And as has been suggested, it's fairly unique that we have student panels. We should have them far more often. I'm going to get our panel of experts to respond to what the students have said. But before I do, perhaps just a few opening remarks from my perspective. We survey around 70,000 students globally. And what was interesting from the student panel was how their comments and their results chimed with our overall results in terms of, the relatively high levels of satisfaction with the lectures, the tutorials. We had 90% of students saying they were satisfied or very satisfied. Also with the tests and exams, they were perhaps more of an issue, 85% satisfaction. And where I think there is an issue even more is in online group work and replicating that social aspect of online study, where satisfaction rates were down to about 79%. We found that 63% of students prefer face-to-face, 37% online. Relatively high levels of stress. 50% of students are concerned about completing their studies. We've seen a 35% increase in counselling, and obviously the students were reflecting on that as well. One of the students commented, "We kind of enjoy it, but there's a burnout." And I think, to some extent, we're all feeling that burnout. There were discussions about the time zone and the different changes in the time zone, and how that was a problem for international students, and how do they feel engaged with the institution when they're A, the other side of the world, and B, in a completely different time zone. Kudos to the lecturers was mentioned across the discussion, and of course everyone appreciates enormously the efforts that have been made, and indeed in some cases students are feeling closer to the lecturers than they perhaps did in a face-to-face environment. I think that's probably what I wanted to say. So let me briefly introduce the panel. I'm going to read their bios, but kind of shortened form, if that's okay. Prof. Azaya, if you can wave and raise your hand, there she is. Professor of Teaching and Learning at University of Technology, Mara, UITM, currently UITM Director of Academic Development. Doctoral degrees in the field of instructional technology, so a perfect person to comment on this kind of area. She's involved in the planning of Malaysian digital education. She co-chairs a nationwide impact study, sits on the National Technical Committee. Her most recent involvement has been on the effectiveness of the government campaign to break COVID-19. She looks at a global survey on mental health, and I hope that's an area we can touch on today, and also looking at a revisit of the overall plan for general education and for Malaysian higher education. The other panelist will be a very familiar figure to you all, Datuk Parmjit Singh, who's been involved in private education and the technology sectors for the last 40 years. He's co-founder and CEO of the PenDaPaT Education Group, which includes APU. And of course, we had a student from APU, and that must have made him very proud, a very articulate student. He's also president of MAPCU, which is the Malaysian Association of Private Colleges and Universities. And I know he's been incredibly busy over the last 18 months, lobbying government in terms of clarity of policy, etc. And I should mention, and I don't want to embarrass him here, but back in 1990, he was IT Personality of the Year, which kind of shows how long he's been involved in the industry. We're also delighted to be joined by Dr. Hasman. If you can give us a wave, Dr. Hasman, thank you very much. Professor of Administrative Sciences at University of Technology Mara until his retirement in June 2018. In 2015, he was seconded to the Malaysian Qualifications Agency as the Deputy Chief Executive Officer involved in quality assurance. And he's participated in scores of international quality assurance agencies, university and program reviews, and he continues to be a very active contributor to quality assurance of higher education globally, at both national and international levels. So that's our panel. I'm not really going to ask an opening question, but perhaps if you could just reflect on what the students said for just 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm going to be fairly strict on the timekeeping, so if you can keep your remarks relatively short. There's lots of questions from the chat panel, which we'll get to. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat panel, and we'll try and get to them as quickly as possible. So, Prof. Zaya, if we can start with you, your reaction to what the students have been saying. Prof. Zaya.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, okay. Well, actually, listening to the students, I kind of, it's like a deja vu kind of thing, because we noticed that throughout the 1.5 years. So I actually wanted to show some of the things that we've done in terms of survey and so on. But what they said was actually what we experienced. For example, in terms of the assessment. So I think our problem, if I don't want to go straight to a problem, but the issue is why you're experiencing the having a lot of tasks and then assessments given throughout the day up to the night and so on. I would say that we have a problem with designing the learning itself among our lecturers. Not problem, but they have to adapt to this designing of online learning and the calculation of student learning time. So when you move a 3-hour exam from in a hall to a 24-hour open book, we need to really calculate the learning time of the students. So we did that actually in my university by simulating what students went through when the whole semester. So imagining students having 7 courses with 7 lecturers, not really working with each other in terms of scheduling or in terms of giving assessment. So you get students at week 7 or week 8 of the semester having like 7 things to submit, and week 14 you have like another 8 projects to submit. So that's the reason, that was the reason for the basically what you call burnout. So when we survey students in my university, it's a very big university, Guy. We have 180,000 students. So we did 3 surveys in May 2020, in December 2020, and another one recently in July. We found students who enjoy online learning, the percentage increased, the ones who really enjoy. Students who really had a hard time, difficult time, the percentage decreased, which is good, right? But we noticed that the bulk of the students now are in the middle, okay, but not okay. Sometimes it's not good, that kind of thing. So we would like to decrease that and get students to be more positive about online learning. So we asked them, the reason being basically is a fatigue, lethargic, and a lot of stuff to do throughout the semester. So that's about the assessment. We can talk a lot more about designing the learning, but I think you're giving me only like what, 2-3 minutes. So I think I'll stop there. If you
we'll come back to those questions. I
we'll
promise.
Come back. All right. Okay.
I just wanted to ask a quick follow-up on, obviously, because you're UiTM and you have students all around the country, from rural and urban areas. Have you noticed any differences between those difficulties that students have as accessing, or obviously they're not in urban areas? Have you noticed a divergence between the rural and urban?
Yes, we do. That's why when in March 2020 we decided not to use the term online learning. So we use open and distance learning, because our students in the rural areas, our lecturers were actually calling them on handphones to teach. or even
Sure.
sending them, mailing them their notes and so on, because we need to work with students who are really in the rural area, not only in Sabah, Sarawak, but also in Johor, in Kelantan, and so on. So we did that. So we define our ODL as learning through online or any other platform with the condition that no student left behind. That's what we did.
Right.
Yeah, and we still believe in that.
Great, thank you very much. And I promise you, we will come back to all the areas you touched on earlier. Datuk Parmjit, your reflections. Obviously, APU, a highly technical university, wonderful campus, lots of technology. Did the opinions of the students chime with some of the things that you're finding at your institution?
Okay, before I get to that, Guy, let me first express myself. First of all, I was beaming with pride listening to the students. They were so articulate, analytical, and an excellent discourse by them. And I think they deserve, a good round of applause after this. And furthermore, like you said, I represent the community of universities in the private sector. Again, listening to a cross-section of the students, I was also very proud that industry was able to transition very quickly, and rather surprised that it's been better than I thought. So it just shows that there is resilience, there is agility in the way we can transition, and none of this was planned. It all happened all of a sudden. And yes, as a technology university, it was a little easier for us to do the transition. But nevertheless, it has been a challenge, I think, not only for us, but for everybody. The students were talking about how challenging it was for them. But I think we must also recognize that it was equally challenging for the staff, delivering lectures the way they did. It was equally challenging for all the support services who had to transition and provide support levels more than ever before, actually. The way they responded, at least I can see that from my community. But listening to the students, it seems to echo the same sentiment. Basically, I don't think anybody had perfection in place. It cannot be expected. It was a huge learning curve. In that process, I believe every institution tried their best in the interest of the students. And it's also very gratifying to hear that the students were also able to transition, and they have expressed, the good and bad about it. But at the end of the day, overall, my pride stands out in knowing that although there was a major disruption in so many industries that came to a standstill, at least education did not come to a standstill. Nobody actually lost time. Life went on, and they'll be able to achieve their career aspirations back on time as it was planned. There was a lot of likes and dislikes expressed on assessments. It was a necessary evil, whether we like it or not. But then again, I think we must credit the system that they were able to transition very quickly. Support, there was mention of burnout on the part of the students. But I can also say there's a massive amount of burnout on the part of the staff as well, trying to deliver from home with all the distractions, with families around them, children, same thing. I mean, they would have also had bandwidth issues, but all that was, addressed by the institutions. I was rather glad to hear about the bonding. A lot of students expressed that there was more bonding between tutors and students. And somebody mentioned that, there were WhatsApp. I don't think before this anybody had any lecturers' phone numbers. Now they all have, and they've been communicating. So you see, it's opened up a lot more communication. On the virtual labs, I think again, institutions need to be congratulated that they were able to quickly transition so that students do not suffer from the lack of practicals. But there was also in the chat, and I think Lazarus is the name, who mentioned that fees should have been reduced. This is a very popular topic among everybody. I know the government universities have reduced it, but they are being funded. So whatever reduction they make, they'll still be funded to carry on the operations. But the private sector is just not funded. Nothing, all the cost was intact, although we are not using the facilities. Yes, there were savings. Everybody mentions that we used less electricity. Yes, that's true. There were reduction in consumables. But then again, I think this does not translate to a significant amount because there was also a massive investment in transitioning to online mode. On the other hand, if we just take the savings without the additional investment, let's say a university has saved 60 to 70,000 or 80,000 a month, reduction in electricity, less fuel or something like that, water, those sort of consumables. And then we round it up hypothetically, let's say to 1 million a year, and you've got 10,000 students. If you divide that saving by students, it comes down to less than 10 ringgit per month per student. Just divide 1 million by 10,000 students and then divide it again by 12, the savings might be 8-9 ringgit per month per student. So, asking for massive reductions, it doesn't happen. Now, if a university does make a massive reduction, I would say that's irresponsible because what you're doing is actually leading to be insolvent, and then the students will not have a university to graduate from because you will not be able to manage. And if we do not realize, last year, according to Ministry of Higher Education's data, 60% of institutions were already losing money before the pandemic for a continuous period of 3 years. Asking anyone to reduce means asking them to shut down really, and then the students will have no institution to go to. So I would like to actually impress on everyone that this popular topic of reducing things is not practical. It's not viable. All of us are still paying for services that we can't use. Those living in condominiums could not use the swimming pool, but they're still paying the service charges. They could not use their gyms, but they still have to pay the same service charges. We paid for our car insurance for the 12 months, but a lot of our cars were not being used. So, life went on. Similarly, I think we've told our students who we were quite transparent. We told them if you like your 8 ringgit 30 cents reduction, we are quite happy to do that per month, every month. It's not a problem, but that's what it is. So with that, I think I may have addressed quite a number of issues, but I also taken up a few things from the chat and also what Lazarus brought up, and I thought it was important to address. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Parmjit. Over to you, Dr. Azman. Your reflections on what the students were commenting on.
Thank you, Guy. And it's always refreshing to hear from students directly because we don't hear from them, but we hear of them from non-students like myself and Dr. Parmjit and everybody else here. So it's always good to hear their experiences as they have experienced and as they have actually experienced, watched their fellow students experience. So it's refreshing. Number two is they have validated many of the things that have already come out thus far online, which is good. And there is definitely a need to understand some of the experiences in a much more nuanced, richer fashion. right? Because this may be a broad sweep of, you've got public, you've got private, you've got large universities, small universities, technical universities, non-technical academic institutions, you've got rural, urban, low income, medium income. So the experiences are going to be not the same as portrayed here, but I think it gives a broad sweep, but there's a little more to learn about different sectors, some of which Prof. Asia alluded to. But it gives you a good overview of what the experience was. And one thing that came out very strongly is where there were issues and challenges, the human aspect helped to moderate and mediate and maybe alleviate it to some extent. I mean, the caring lecturers, the WhatsApp, the offer to help, the offer to hear, I think that helped to help a lot of students deal with this change. That's a second point. The third one I had was, it also showed that how much students also need that face-to-face. Now they want to get back to campus. They want to have a coffee with their colleagues. All these things that happens besides class and lab in campus. That's as much important part of learning and building and bonding as is learning the theories and the science in the classroom, whether it is in the classroom or on the online. So I think a lot of us and a lot of students, as they spoke, there is a certain amount of excitement about going back to campus. There's also a certain amount of anxiety about going back to something they've left 2 years ago. For some of them have not been to campus. This is the first time they're going in after you got admitted, right? So there's a little bit of anxiety because this is new to them, but that sort of in some way restores a little bit of faith that the online magic cannot do everything. You still need the human interface, the people to make education rich. The other things, a lot of things that student mentioned is about, because our curriculum and most universities, the curriculum was not designed for online. It was designed for classroom technology. And then it was suddenly placed on online, and they try to make it work as much as possible, try to innovate as much as possible, but it was never optimized fully, right, for online. And I suppose over time this will happen, and maybe there will be more satisfaction and more engagement. And the last point is, I think the regulatory bodies and the QA bodies also jumped in very quickly, very early, to ensure that the adaptation to this pandemic was as much as possible smooth, that the universities could actually strategize and go online in terms of assessment, teaching, and things like that. So a lot of flexibility was given to adapt to this reality. But whenever you are facing an unplanned change like this, a disruption of this nature, there were a lot of things that were done on an experimental basis. And assessment is a good example. And therefore, I'm sure from this learning, further refinements take place, and both teaching, learning, assessment, and everything else will find a better equilibrium than the experience of students. And the last the point is the pandemic, although unplanned and unexpected and not welcome, of course, certainly, had many great positives. And one is, we want students to adapt. And you could not have designed a better course on adaptation, even if you have tried and put all the minds together. This was a virus that forced everybody to adapt, and students adapted in their own ways, in many ways, brilliantly. And I think a lot of employers want this kind of students, right? Who can adapt to unexpected changes, not the expected. The future is not going to be linear, right? So this was a great positive to take away. Right. So students were telling their story, but I was reading beyond the story to find out, hey, this is a great experience of doing something all of a sudden, both for the university, for the lecturers, and especially for the student, because you're dealing with adversity. Is going through adversity, resilience, right? And a lot of students picked up digital skills. video editing skills that Akmal was talking about, collaborative learning using all the different system, things like that. So great things happen. They might not have touched it, but I think indirectly, as they were talking about it, I said, okay, everybody had learned many new things that you would not have learned so quickly on your own, if not for the virus. So I think we in some ways have to thank the virus for this opportunity to really adapt.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there and just ask a quick follow-up. Were you surprised out? I mean, you had much experience with the MQA, and I know many others have interacted with the MQA. They're not necessarily known for their flexibility. Were you surprised by how flexible they were during this period?
Yes. I think necessity is mother of all invention. So necessity forced everyone to think differently and think in terms of how to continue. It's about business continuity, as Paramjit mentioned. So yeah, they were quite flexible.
I know,
and
there has been much praise.
Yeah, and I must add that the professional bodies were not really, didn't really step up quickly.
That's the way.
They were very slow and because they were conservative, they're very slow. They were watching. And even as the pandemic is working its way out, they didn't, in many ways, they caused delays in student learning because they couldn't make up their mind whether assessment could be different from what they traditionally did. And universities are caught between students and the professional bodies as to how do we move. We want to move and take care of students, but professional bodies were slow. So yes.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Asman, sorry to interrupt you. Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for that. Let's move on to the future, because the kind of students have been reflecting on their experience. A question which came in about how much of the online teaching and learning experience should we keep? We're moving back to campuses on October the 15th. How much should we keep? How much should we stop? Prof. Azhar, you're obviously an expert in this area. Tell us your view.
Thank you, guys. I think when we come back in October, we will go for hybrid. We should define it properly. We should go for hybrid. We should go for a blend, and we can go totally online. Well, because we cannot accommodate everybody to come back. The campus capacity is probably, I'm not sure about the other campuses. In our case, it's only about like 60,000 or so. So some students will have to be will come back on campus because of all the practical, clinical, and so field-based courses and so on. The rest will be at home. So lecturers will be doing kind of a hybrid kind of teaching where they can do it synchronously, meaning they can be teaching in class while the students at home are also following them at the same time, real time, or they can even do an asynchronous kind of hybrid. They would teach. Candace was very particular about videos, your video lectures, right? Of course, the resources, we will not bring it down, because when we move forward, it's going to be this kind of learning. And I don't think we are going back to 2019 in terms of delivery. So then lecturers can also do this. This week, they will be all online. Next week, they come face-to-face when they are on campus. So we can reduce some of the risks as well, because we also have to take care of the SOP. And they can, also blend in terms of maybe some topics will go online, some topics are face-to-face, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of permutations, and I can find that it can be very interesting. But of course, the students will, if I were the student, I will be asking, how am I going to be supported, right? For example, virtual labs and so on, will it still be on? Will virtual lectures will still be on? So we suggest that they should have a proper scheme of work throughout the semester so that students are clear what is going to happen for the next few weeks and so on. So they can plan for their learning and so on. So that is what I think should be done at the universities. We cannot come bringing them back to campus and say you all go online. It will not make sense. we need to have that interaction, the ones that we have been, people have been putting on the chat, because students will have to meet the lecturers, they will have to meet their friends, and that they can do on campus, and at times they do it online. That is the way we should go. Okay.
Great. Yep. Thank you very much. Datuk Parmjit, from your perspective, APU's perspective, and also broadly across the sector, what should we continue? What should we cease in terms of the online teaching modes that we've been using?
I think by and large, we're going to be no different from what Prof. Azia just said. But there are also other considerations. For example, the regulatory framework. We are now on a reprieve, actually. We've been given permission until the end of the year to carry on online or hybrid. We will require the ministry to actually respond to the new mode that we desire, because we were not licensed to offer online courses, actually. So for these 2 years, we were given the permission to do it as an alternative. The approval right now is until the end of the year. So we are seeking clarification as to whether.
Sorry, can I just clarify that? Is that for your sector? That's across the private sector, across the whole sector, or specifically across the private sector? Everybody, yeah.
Not just private sector, everyone. Sure. Because online was the domain of the open universities. Traditional universities were not allowed to do it. And then also it depends on how the professional bodies will also respond, because they have also accepted the new norm for this period. But going forward, whether they will go back to the old practices, we do not know. All these are uncertainties. But at the same time, we must recognize that we can't go back to normal. It's never going to be. It's always going to be a mix. If we don't do it, we will become less competitive as an international education hub, because people will like that flexibility. People will like the way things are being done on a hybrid basis. If we don't keep up with the new way of doing things, we of course will do it better, because right now there was no physical contact. So once we bring that back, and certain subjects, students will say, look, why do I need to come to class for a subject like this? We've got some, and Prof. Husband will know that we also have some compulsory subjects required by MQA. Some of this can be carried very effectively online, rather than everybody sitting there and just listening to something. So that's my view. I mean, we strongly desire to go into a mixed mode in various forms, but at the end of the day, to make sure that we achieve the learning outcomes, but that will never be compromised. So it is going to be this or that, depending on how best we can achieve the learning outcomes. Thank you.
Do you think it's, sorry, just a quick follow-up. Do you think it's the end of the kind of large-scale lecture hall and lecture room full of students, and obviously we're going to be more about tutorials? Is it the end of the lecture room?
It's too early to say, because it is an experience we're all going through. When students are back, we'll begin to also realize how they're taking physical lectures. At the end of the day, somebody did say, and I think it was Akmal. Akmal was saying that we should listen to students more. And that's really what we desire to do. Because at the end of the day, we are serving them in the best way possible. And like I said, without compromising the learning outcome. So we will keep listening. We will keep, understudying and see what happens. Too early to say what will happen.
Great, thank you so much. Prof. Hasman, from your perspective, in terms of what will continue and what we should keep and what we should stop.
Okay, just to revisit this question, we were already going online through blended teaching and learning even before the pandemic. Many of the public-private universities, even the small colleges, were doing this. to the extent possible, affordable, and they have the means to do it. So it was already there. Just that when 2020 came, everybody had to switch, and everybody switched very rapidly. And those who had a good learning management system were able to do it slightly better. Those who did not have a learning management system as part of their regular teaching and learning or blended learning were just using meeting management systems. The Zoom is not an LMS, nor is MS Team or WebEx, things like these are meeting management systems, right? So it's nice to have a whole lecture, meet and student, things like that, but they cannot support the entirety of synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning. So I think many would want to go beyond. They have done one part of it, so they want to go beyond and see if they can continue capitalizing on this online learning. But my fear also is that they're thinking of just Zoom as online learning. Many without the means are thinking of just online learning. And many colleges did not even subscribe to one. The lecturers are using the free Zoom, very limited Zoom. So it is I think they would adopt a lot more online learning, but hopefully they would do it in a way that would ensure that this becomes a more comprehensive arrangement for online learning rather than just using a meeting management tool, which is going to be very, very limited. So I think they will adopt the QA bodies, regulatory bodies can't keep their head in the sand. They will also have to look at, and over time, the teaching learning has been moving. The requirements, approvals, and accreditation also has been moving between what we traditionally call conventional programs and ODL programs. The needle has moved even on conventional programs. A lot more online is now permitted, up to 6%, I think. But I think it will continue to move even further after this national 2-year experiment with online learning. The only thing is that I hope the online learning gets adopted and it is used as much as it promises effective teaching and learning. Ultimately, that will be it, and not a dogmatic view that online learning is a better way for the future, is a better way of teaching and learning. I think every type or medium of learning can be good or bad. The classroom could be very powerful and good. The online learning could be really bad. It all depends on how it's designed, delivered, monitored, and improved. I think if that is done, then yeah. And I personally think that we can't turn back. And more online learning is going to happen. Hopefully, people understand the difference between online learning, blended learning, hybrid learning, and remote learning. They are not the same concepts. And as long as they understand, but I think a lot of campus-based learning is going to be online. Students will be in campus and they will be online. And they may not be remote learning, right? In some universities, like as I mentioned, there may be a combination of remote learning, which they might manage as an hybrid. That means there may be actual classes and remote students actually dialing in and following your classes. So I think these things are now possible, and people have experimented, and now this is going to move forward slowly but surely. But it will be mediated by university policies, some other policies as well. One of the other policies is actually immigration. Where do they allow students to stay away from campus? There's an attendance need. They have to be in a certain location. So I think those things will also dictate how fast and how quickly this can actually move forward. But certainly it will get adopted a lot more.
Great, thank you so much. I want to touch on one big area which was raised by the students, and I think moving forward is important. And remembering, of course, one of the reasons for having PenDaPaT is that you can put forward recommendations to the authorities, to the policy makers themselves. Let's have a look at the whole area of mental stress, which we've seen rise enormously. I've got a comment here from a student. By nature, I dislike interacting with people. If I get too comfortable studying online, I might become a total recluse. And there is a sense, and there were some comments from Prof. Zaini on that as well. Students are getting too used to online. There's levels of stress. They're worried about completing their studies. Will they have the financial wherewithal to complete their studies, or will their parents have the financial wherewithal? So how can we respond to that enormous area of stress? As I mentioned earlier, we've seen a 35% global increase in counselling, and universities have done a fantastic job. But can you reflect on that? And also, one of the key areas is, what can we tell the policymakers? What do the policymakers have to put in place to ensure that we're dealing with that issue? Sorry, it's a long question. So, Prof. Azia, over to you. You mentioned this earlier, but what's your feeling of what the action should be?
Okay. We don't want students to be, like what she said, total recluse.
Yeah,
right?
I think a student who was getting almost too comfortable being online. Yeah.
I know. All right. Okay. So I'm going to say about what I think what we should do at the universities first, maybe later to Prof. Hazman and QA. When it goes back to designing the learning experience online. So when we tell our lecturers, you don't go into the Google Meet, for example, or WebEx, and then shut the camera and read textbook for the next 1 hour. We had lecturers doing that in the beginning. So now the lecturers will have to make sure that the students are actually interacting among them during the actual lesson, and also outside in terms of activities or assessment. So they cannot, if they just read books and come for tests and then do everything alone, they will not gain the marks, for example. So now we design the experience, not actually looking at the topic 1, you have to finish this, topic 2, you finish this, topic 3 to finish this. So when we tell lecturers, you look at the whole session or the whole semester. So in my university, we come up with a model for delivery we call the ADAB model, because in this case, the lecturer will have to situate the student, tell the students where you are, what you're doing, what you have to do next. And then actually there is one step where we call connect. So the students will be connected to other people, to new knowledge, to experts, to the environment and everything else. So I'm going to just talk about that particular connect. So now we go for a collaborative teaching and also collaborative learning framework. So for example, this lecturers will have to collaborate with one another, maybe me and probably somebody, Dr. Mazura, for example, in Taylor's. We can have basically one lesson online with our students and together, and we can have activities so that they can all do things together. So we try to reduce this one person who keeps quiet and not do anything during the lesson. And then we also have people coming in from outside. That was what one of the students said. It's nice now we can get to be with our global peers. So because we have a proper global learning framework in our university. So we have a group of people, of lecturers working on global learning framework, so on global learning. So they have every semester, they will run 2 or 3 classes with the global, with global peers, and students will get to talk to experts from overseas and so on. So the students, we are hoping that the students will not think that we are just moving whatever we have in the physical classroom before and replicating everything online exactly. So they can just sit quietly and just watch the PowerPoint being changed. That's not the way we do for online learning. So that's very important actually. And we found that that's the one thing that we really have to work on in the university, so that every lecturers understand that particular of designing that experience. So we need to come up with a good framework actually for lecturers to follow, a good guideline, so that they can do this well, because we don't even, That's
Sorry to
okay.
interrupt you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Jimmy, how are we doing for time? Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
your-
we have 10 more minutes. Yep.
10 more minutes. Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you so much. Sorry, I just wanted to follow up. Sorry, Professor Zaya, I just want to follow up on that. So in a sense, it's a combination of redesigning the curriculum, but also training the teachers on how to use. It's not really about the technology. It's training and the curricula.
I think we have done with the training of technology. We did that a lot. The first
We've got the technology already. Yeah.
Actually, in my university, we started online learning in 1998. We've started a long time ago, but people, of course, did not pick up. So, but we did a lot, and we're still doing it a lot. But now we changed our mindset a bit. We talk about, we call it collaborative groups. We have lecturers working as collaborative groups on, virtual learning, on, video learning, and so on. But the learning part is very important, and the designing part for the lecturers is very, very important. So we do that now. So we really hope that it will be a much better, we call it ODL 4.0 next semester, a better semester next semester.
Fantastic, thanks so much. Datuk Parmjit, obviously APU, you've got a large percentage of international students who haven't been able to access the campus and maybe have increasing stresses and strains. They may be in their home country or they may be in Malaysia, but stuck in their apartment. How have you handled those sort of mental stresses that students face and their concerns about being able to complete their studies, feeling engaged with the university itself?
Okay, I mean, you've already used the word engage. I mean, that's what we have really been doing. That's the underlying philosophy. We have not allowed anyone to be passive. We have been engaging with students. I mean, some of the stresses would be that time zones, for those who have gone abroad and gone home, time zones has been a challenge. We had to reorientate our sessions midway somewhere so that even Malaysian students, Asian students will accept some odd hours, but not so odd that they become 3, 4 in the morning. So there are lectures, let's say, for example, 7:30 in the morning and then 8 o'clock at night, sort of thing. So that adjustment did take place, but at the same time, I just want to echo what Prof. Asia was saying. It doesn't matter where a student is. The key thing is to be engaged, and collaborative teaching and learning is the way to go, because that will make it will make sure that we minimize the losses of not being face to face, and so that's the way I look at it. I mean, I am not a total expert in teaching and learning, but in our university, we have created a digital teaching and learning hub. We have our own labs right now. There's a lot of work being done. There's a lot of experimentation being done. We're also trying to incorporate virtual reality into the whole process, augmented reality. So we're trying to go a few steps beyond just the traditional instructional methodology. So we've got experts right now on board and been recruited as well during the period, because we're excited about this new dimension that we're getting into. So instructional design is the key to address them. So to go back to your question about foreign students, it's interesting to note that a lot of people may not realize that there is a new form of competition today. Foreign students came to Malaysia because it was cheaper to get educated here than going to Australia or in England. And the part that was very much cheaper was the cost of living. Now, the cost of living does not factor in if you are studying online, because you're sitting in your home and receiving instruction and finishing your course. So right now, the new form of competition is, for very much less than coming to Malaysia, you can actually sit at home and finish a degree in a very established Western university at a lesser cost. So you see, I mean, that is something I don't think anybody is thinking about. So where is the edge? When we talk about foreign students, I have my worries as to whether it is going to be business as usual, because everybody is online right now, and everybody will want to offer online full degrees. So how do we compete?
Yeah, and that's such a good point. I mean, we could discuss that for a long time, but that's a huge challenge for Malaysia you've just raised, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where is that? why if they're all studying online, then yeah. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to discuss that fascinating area. We'll have to move on. I'm conscious of the time. What we need to look at is policymakers, and I want you to think of 3 recommendations that you would give the policymakers moving forward. And obviously, this is something that PenDaPaT will put in the summary of the event. So I'm going to start with Prof. Azman, Dr. Hasman. If you can think of 3 key recommendations for policymakers that you would give, both from out of what you've heard in the event, but also obviously from your own experience. Dr. Hasman.
I think that the first thing would be, number one, recognize that the online is going to be an important medium, whether it's blended or it's hybrid or it's remote, it's going to be an important medium. And to the extent that any guidelines do not recognize this, whether the guidelines are from the ministry or from MQA or any professional body doesn't recognize this, then it is time to revisit these guidelines so that you do not prescribe. I mean, there will always be some guidelines and some prescriptions, but you do not lock yourself into a particular method or mode or technology of teaching and learning. It needs to be opened up. That is an important lesson for those in QA bodies and regulatory bodies. And I would add, especially the professional bodies, need to open up. Do not lock yourself in. The second thing is student experience, although has been an important part of all these things, need to be a much more important part of whether it's quality assurance, whether it's approval, or reaccreditation. Student experience should be a much more important part, and getting students to participate in the process to provide the experience and use that experience as an important input to determine whatever incentives or disincentives you want to give. I think that should become play a bigger role than it has otherwise, right? Because we have used certain proxies of experience. Maybe go directly to the experience rather than use proxies, right? Certain standards, certain guidelines, certain principles. So that would be the second one. And I think the third one is to look carefully at encouraging through some incentives the adoption of technology. I think that technology is not cheap. So somewhere is actually encouraging people to adopt these technologies in teaching and learning. And some of this can come through collaborative acquisition, right? Getting it across through a consortium of some sort so that you have leverage to acquire for many people to use. And I do hope as part of the collaborative acquisition is also a collaborative thinking. I still do not understand why in public universities, everyone has to have Islamic finance lectures. There is an expert institution under Bank Negara called INSEF. All of us have to just share the resources. Sure. They are well known, they are niche institutions. Why do you have to have classes everywhere, recruit and try to pretend to be an expert in the area? So I think they need to break the walls and go across the institution where you have expertise, recognize it, share it. So collectively, I think you will be better, the students will be better for it. And I think education will enjoy a lot of benefits.
Yeah, very good point. Another, yeah, absolutely. Why do we need marketing 101 in every single university? Yeah, precisely. Okay, thank you so much. Datuk Parmjit, 3 recommendations for policymakers moving forward.
Okay, I mean, it's already been covered by Prof. Hasman, but I will add to it.
Please.
You know, I like the point where Prof. Hasman said that the student experience should feature into future guidelines and not just use proxies. I mean, that's extremely important. It should not just be a group of experts sitting there and coming up with standards. You know, we should see how it applies to students. But the incentives to adopt flexibility, I mean, to adopt technology We have pushed that point very hard already at budget cycles because it is expensive, it is not cheap. When we are providing all the incentives to the rest of industries to digitize, I think education should not be left behind, because at the end of the day, you know, if we are not producing graduates that have currency of technology in whatever way, industry will suffer, and that will not be healthy. So it's important to make sure that's supported. But I would think that the biggest change I would like is mindset changes. You know, that's the key to everything. To start providing flexibility, to put some trust into the system, that we should know how to. I mean, the only thing the authority should be worried about is the outcomes. How we get there should be left to the innovative spirit of the institutions, and I think then we'll be getting somewhere. So, and the regulatory frameworks must support, you know, the flexibility that we are looking for, and the innovation that we are all brimming with. When we are all very excited. Somebody said we must thank COVID. I'm not going to thank COVID, but the blessing in disguise is that this was a major reset. Otherwise, we would have just gone on and on the way we've been for the last few decades. It's a major reset, and I think I've already said right in the beginning when I spoke, it is with pride I say that we've got an amazing education infrastructure in the country that was agile enough and so resilient, you know, not to be disrupted by the lockdowns, you know, and we carried on, and all students will finish on time wherever they are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Prof. Zaya, your final remarks.
Ditto. Well, anyway, I agree. I agree with both panels, but I'm just going to reiterate on the flexibility of delivery, and also flexibility in looking at the assessment, because we don't want the universities to think that there is only one or a few ways that the correct way to measure what the students' outcome. We believe that we are outcome based. We go with outcome based education. So the outcomes are important. How we measure can be different. So we should be thinking of a lot more than just summative assessment. There will probably be ipsative assessment. It can be diagnostic at the start and so on. So that part is very important for the policymakers to understand that as well, because when we go, for example, measuring whether these students achieve this outcome a different way, and with another group a different way, it can be done because it's still the same outcome that we are trying to achieve. So that is one. Of course, we need the technology infrastructure for all these things to happen, but then we do not want the focus to be just technology. So going back to the students' experience and the students' voice. So students' experience, you should have policies on learning across campus, learning across universities, learning across to the global front, and so on. But to the students, if I may say this, maybe not so much for the policymakers. After all this, I think we need to build a culture of responsiveness among the students. You have to respond, whatever it is, the change and so on. If you need to go back to campus, you know, respond as you know, as agile as you can. So go for being a responsible and responsive learner. I think it will work for all of us, because we say the same things to the lecturers as well. That's all from me, Guy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Zaya. And also thank you, Datuk Parmjit. Thank you, Dr. Hasman. That was a fantastic panel. Sorry, apologies at the time was slightly shorter, but obviously we spent a valuable amount of time listening to the students as well. So thank you so much for your time. I'll now hand it back to Jimmy, who's the MC. Jimmy, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So maybe Guy, would you like to do just a quick sum up of the whole session?
Well, I think that would, the plan there was that those three comments, I think, summarize the session in terms of the recommendations for policymakers. And so I was conscious of the time, so perhaps we can move on to the final final remarks
Right.
from Prof. Zaini, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Guy, for
Pleasure.
moderating the session. So I believe everyone, I mean, it's a fruitful discussion as well. So I would like to invite Prof. Zaini to do her closing remarks.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. Hello again, everyone. My name is Zaini. My committee members and I look after this association so that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. What a great program this has been. I'm so proud of the students panel, as I'm equally proud of the expert panels. Great feedback from the students' voices. They support as well as reject some of our hypotheses. But thank you to Dr. Ross for putting this together and for coaching them. I believe this is a real learning process for the students, yeah, to say things in a succinct and powerful manner. And we hope that more students will be able to take part in this kind of discourse. A special thanks to the Discourse task group, Ross, Doria, Jimmy, Tasnim, Rutimi, Izani, Ainul, who work hard at organizing this inclusive session. Our students panels, our distinguished panelists, and of course our moderators, Guy and Mazura. And of course, more importantly to all of you for taking the time to join us this morning. Let me conclude with two remarks. We know that we are at the crossroads. The COVID-19 has, given us some kind of difficulties, a bit flexibility, and it wasn't a short term. It is quite a long term, but we need to prepare for a brighter future. So, although the problems are being faced by maybe 10%, 20%, or 30% of the students group or of the lecturers group, in terms of the issues or challenges that they face, the idea is if we provide access to students, we need to ensure success, no matter if only a small portion of the students have difficulties. We cannot ignore the issues and challenges just because only 10% or 20% of the students face them. Secondly, there remains a good reason to be optimistic about education technology innovations, as long as, in my opinion, that we center the whole process on ethical teaching and learning, as the panelists and the students said, improve outcomes, and the long-term impact of all these new ways of teaching and learning at the heart of this university education. So with that, thank you, Jimmy. Over to you, Ross.
Thank you. Now let's invite Ross to do a short remark.
Thank you very much, Zaini. I think, Zaini, you covered everything. Thank you so much. My sincere thanks to Dr. Mazura, leading and encouraging the students to speak up with confidence. I think they did fantastically well. And my only regret is we didn't take the student panel earlier for the two discourses that we had. We will keep this in mind and we'll have more student panel now PenDaPaT webinars in future. So I think it was a very, very good deliberation on the topic. Certainly it's an important topic. And I think there are some really good words shared here today. If I could just repeat a couple of things that really caught my eye or caught my ear because I was listening to it. The culture of responsiveness, I think it's important, not just for the policymakers, not just for the students, like what but also for the policymakers, institutional leaders and students. We all must be responsive moving forward. And just to echo the word that Zaini said, we need to be prepared for the brighter future. And the only way we can do this, if we continue to learn from our past and make that change or move the policies that we have to actually better prepare for the future. So good reason to be optimistic, I agree, but at the same time, keeping an eye on these ethical concepts that we have about how assessments are right, how do we achieve the learning outcomes? And maybe I would end, maybe it's more significant to the private sector. I would want to end with what Dr. Paramjit said about trusting the institution's autonomy. I do agree we have one of the best systems in the world. Our higher education system in Malaysia is very resilient. We have moved through many different economic crises, and we have come through pandemic, the COVID-19, with such good response from the people concerned, from all stakeholders. It is time that there is the trust given to these institutions to continue to build Malaysia and to continue to make sure that Malaysian universities stand globally as a best place to be for higher education. So with that, I would like to just join Zaini to say thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you for your presence. Without you, we could not be here today. And I would also like to thank all the panelists, the moderators, Jimmy, the tech team, and everyone else who's been with us to make this a success. Thank you, everyone. Good day and have a lovely weekend. Stay safe and stay well. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. Yeah, please don't leave yet. Okay, so I would like to invite everyone to on your camera so that we can have a group photo. So just to commemorate today's good event. So yeah, so yes. Okay, so we have about a few pages. Okay, so I'll go to the first page first. So I'm not sure where do you stand. So maybe we just keep smiling. Right. Okay, so the first page, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. So let's look at the second page. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the third page, right? Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Right, and the final one. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And we shall end our session today. And please take care and stay safe. Bye.
Thank you, Jimmy. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good day. Salam.